Timo Satanas cras rex restitio altere.
Almighty Satan, great ruler of the universe,
Edit al strenium bupidis lerie untu bistitio.
foot upon thy throne, and eye of the serpent ever seeing.
Castio ubi esnuvio des lels unsano, et vio respusio con sapiae.
Cast upon us now thy light and wisdom as we intertwine with thee.
Un maduo rexiore ine con nutrexio parasta umbivio tamande elechuet, excelsior Satanas.
And may your kingdom reign with never-ending praise as we all say,
Hail,
Satan.
Satan.
We three servants, thy intertwined priests, come to thy throne. May those that are yours only hear thy voice. Ave Satanas.
Ave Satanas.
To our studio audience, welcome this evening. This is Malthorpe Draco coming to you from Studio 3B, and this is Night Sessions. We have a special show for you tonight, and back with us again is our co-host, Magnus Cygnus Atratus, and of course, Magnus Alistair Knott. Alistair, tell us about the focus of our show.
Thanks, Malthorpe. This evening, we're going to be talking about Night Sessions Revisited. The purpose of our evening is to discuss why the three of us started this to start with. We started this show. We want to kind of talk through what we got out of it, what others shared with us along the way, and where our ministries go from here. So that's our show tonight, and we'll try to get all this done in one dark evening. But before we go there, let's go to the one that brought us all here. Father, thank you so much for bringing us together tonight. Thank you so much for your abundant blessings. Thank you for keeping us and for moving us forward along our individual journeys. Thank you for bringing the three of us together. And we ask you to bless each of the listeners. Keep them, Satanas, and bring them closer to you, and let them know that they are not alone. They are with us along this journey. In your name, so mote it be.
So mote it be.
So mote it be.
So how is everybody doing tonight?
So I'm doing well. I'm back from a couple of long journeys, and I know we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight, but I'm in a good place.
Excellent. Cygnus, how are you doing?
Doing fantastic, brothers. It's great to be here with the two of you back again for this episode. Really excited about today's show.
Excellent. Malthorpe, back to you for our questions this evening.
Thanks, Alistair. So let's spend a few minutes talking about our original purpose and vision for Night Sessions, because I think each of us approached it a little bit differently. We had some different thoughts about what we wanted to get out of it. And so I want to talk a little bit about what each of us hoped our listening audience would get out of it and what we hope to get out of it personally. Guys, I think this really is as I said, a little different for each of us. So I'm going to be interested to hear the responses, because these will be firsthand real responses from you guys. We haven't practiced this. So Alistair, why don't we start with you?
Well, first, to me, it's about furthering the satanic kingdom, putting the word out, letting people know that there are others out there that are like-minded and who are on this left-hand path journey. We're finding our way, and sometimes separately and sometimes together. And what I like about this Night Sessions is we all come together. I was able to come together with two brothers that I deeply love and cherish. And to be able to do this and to enjoy this, the camaraderie and the togetherness, and also the learning. I've learned so much from both of you. And I know that it has been a blessing for me in my life. And I know it's been a blessing for others as well.
That's great. Cygnus, how about for you? What was your vision?
Well, brother, when you and Magus Alistair were first inspired really with this project, I was honored just to tag along your coattails and to share in this the idea of three of us from different walks of life coming together in that spirit of unity and brotherhood, as Magus Alistair was speaking to, and just sharing around the fire here and having an honest, just open, frank conversation and being real and as to how Satanas has moved us. And that's a blessing, an infernal blessing. And I only hope that for the listeners, for those that are out there seeking, that this is something that may serve them, that there are golden nuggets or tidbits that may serve them in their own path in that personal relationship with the Father, Satanas.
So, Malthorpe, how about you? What does this show mean to you?
I think for me, the vision was certainly multifaceted. First of all, I knew I wanted to find a way to serve Satanas, to put the training, Alistair, that you gave me to work. And that's always been a struggle for me. For many years, I was somewhat, directly engaged with your ministry. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. But, you count on countless occasions, you would say, brother, you got to find your ministry. You got to find what your ministry is. And, night sessions was certainly a start for that. But I also had been burned growing up in the Exean church. And I knew that I didn't want to live a life for something that I truly believed in. I saw too many in ministry that were there for the money, were there for the power, were there for something that was missing inside their own lives that they wanted to manufacture to kind of bring some sense of control. And I didn't want that. I didn't want that for Satanas' ministry. I didn't want to see that same level of burnout. And plus, my commitment was a lot different. I never felt connected to the church. I certainly always felt connected to the Father once that I knew that he was and could sense that he was in my life. So I was trying to find a way to give back, particularly for those that were struggling to find their own journey, because that's where I struggled. I struggled to know what books to buy and what website to read and what guru, if you will, to follow. And so I wanted to help people that were looking for that, for the start of that journey. Secondly, I knew I wanted to do something with you guys because I think the three of us really enjoy our time together. In fact, I know that's the case because we've talked about that, not just on the show, but behind the scenes. And so I started my search on just so much bullshit to get through when you start on this journey. And there's a lot of wasted time and a lot of wasted resources on things that really didn't matter. Now, books and books and books that you can buy and websites you can join, so on and so forth. I wanted others to avoid that pitfall as much as is possible. Now, look, I'm not giving up my books. I'm keeping my books, and my books have certainly added to my ministry. So it's not an attack against education or books, but I think sometimes we overcomplicate this, and it doesn't need to be overly complicated. So I definitely wanted to give back in that regard. I think each of us has the capacity and the ability to come to Satanas right now, to come to Satanas tonight. I can't tell you the number of folks that have told me about something that worked that was suggested out of a ministry, and then all of a sudden it's not working. And I'll say, well, are you still meditating to the Father? Are you still praying to the Father? Well, no, because that connection isn't there any longer. There's a lapse. And so we'll talk about some of those things tonight. Anyway, don't get me wrong, knowledge helps. I'm not attacking knowledge whatsoever, but it can also be a crutch. And, we'll address some of that tonight. So the freedom to be with the Father and to share about the Father, and for me to have something to be able to share about the Father, that was the outlet I was looking for with night sessions, and I think we achieved a lot of that. So seeing us back to you on a follow-up question, were you surprised by any reaction that we received from our show, either good or bad?
Well, absolutely. Brother Mel, as you mentioned, I think we have achieved that, and all infernal praise unto the Father for that, because a lot of the feedback I did receive was very positive. And some of the feedback we received from folks was that, that each of us brought a different perspective to the journey, and how refreshing that was, and how we were just able to share so naturally, as we do, like just in real time together. And although we have different experiences, we still are, understanding of each other's journey, and really just seeing how Satanas is moving in each and every one of us, and in that spirit of tolerance. And so I did get a lot of feedback from folks really appreciating that. And as far as constructive feedback, I think we're always open, as we've shared with each other, to listen to the spirit of Satanas moving, and to go where he leads us, and to be open to that spirit of creativity. So I also am very grateful to our listeners for their support, and for the questions, and for also giving their input in this process. And as Magus Alistair said earlier, you are not alone. And I hope that you feel this connection as you're listening to this show. And this is for you, and this is for Satan.
Thanks, Sig. Alistair, as our chief magus, how about for you? You certainly received a lot more feedback than I think the three of us, because the metrics were coming in to you first. Were you surprised by any reactions that we received?
Yes, I was. First of all, I don't know if our listeners know, but night sessions was your idea, your baby. And both me and Cygnus, we are so happy that you came up with this idea and this vision, because it is 100% yours. And we all contribute in our individual way, but it was really your brainchild and your idea coming to fruition. So I wanted to put that out there. As far as the feedback, the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. Comments like, wow, I really enjoy listening to you guys, because it's just like sitting around a kitchen table and just talking, no show, no selling product, none of that, just talking and sharing, what is your experience? Well, what is your experience? Well, what struggles have you faced? Well, what about you? And overwhelmingly positive. And I kind of suspected that there were a lot of people out there that had that same feeling and yearning to be part of something. But I guess it was a bit of a surprise when it actually happened, and the comments started coming in, and people started really connecting with it. I think from that aspect, that was really surprising.
Guys, I think for me, I was surprised by two things. First of all, I've done quite a bit of traveling since we last did a show, because I think it's been about 7 months. And I've been in Europe a couple times. I was out in California as well. And it's amazing the number of times that people will hear my name, Mouthorpe, and they'll say something along the lines of, hey, are you that guy from Night Sessions? Because it is a little bit of an unusual name. And, normally the conversation will go something like this. Man, I put Night Sessions on and I just play it back to back to back. It's just got such great content. I mean, it's essentially what you said, Alistair. And so I was surprised by the number of people out in the community that knew about it, were listening to the show, and were using it. I remember specifically saying, though, on one of the shows, if you're getting something out of this, let us know. And we didn't get much response to that question. And I remember being surprised by that, because it was almost like, if you're not getting something out of this, let us know, because then we're going to decide whether or not we're going to continue to do the show. And, it's not about false pride. It's not about, hey, give us a pat on the back because we're doing a show. That's really not what this is all about. For me, though, it was about creative content and making sure that the 4 to 5 hours we're investing into the show adds value. We're not charging for the show. We're not asking people to join a Patreon in order to get to it. We're giving it out there as a free source. But it's surprising to me the lack of direct feedback to the question we had. So, I thought a lot about it, and I thought, we'll do the show because it's the right thing to do. But we've certainly received some good feedback about it. The question is where we go from here. So, hopefully during this show we'll address some of that issue. But struggling with format for the satanic community is, I think, something that everyone who's in the ministry kind of runs into as an issue, and certainly that's true for us too. So, Alistair, Cygnus, you guys want to offer any thoughts to what I just said?
Yeah, I think that's spot on, because what a lot of people don't realize is it takes a lot of time to put these episodes together. It takes a lot of time to edit the audio, because we have bloopers and and we have a good time, with Satanas. But all of that doesn't translate well. So it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy to make sure that these episodes are what we consider good enough to release to the public, because the last thing we want to do is release something that is, not listenable, or something that, people listen to a few minutes and they go, this is 3 guys in their basement or something. And it's certainly not that. Everything from Malthorpe writing the scripts, and that was something interesting that I talked about during one of my live events, was the fact that you write these scripts. We don't just get together and chit chat. There is a message built in, and there is a focus. And while it's not 100% scripted, we certainly have a flow of what we're going to do. And it's because of you, Malthorpe, that we have that, so that we're not wandering around and meandering. I think we've all watched videos where people just talk about things that aren't interesting for a long time. Maybe they say that about my videos. I don't know, but
I think you've got good content, and I think that's certainly recognized out there, and Cygnus has it as well. Was there anything else we wanted to get out of this show that we haven't talked about yet? Alistair, how about it for you?
I think this in itself is a milestone, because this episode is the first episode where we've been on camera. Everything else has been audio. And I think, at least in my opinion, I think people are going to connect with this, because they may have ideas in their mind of, what we look like, or, when we're going through the discussions, our inflections and responses and things like that. And so doing this as a video episode is, to me, really, really nice. It's a nice way to sum these episodes up.
Yeah, I think that's right. Cygnus, how about from your vantage point, anything that we haven't talked about yet that you want to bring up?
As you mentioned earlier, the idea of receiving feedback from the listeners and from folks, I think sometimes we don't, we maybe overlook how important our voice could have in terms of sending an email out or giving some feedback. And so I do encourage our listeners to, to reach out and to feel free to share, that their voice does have weight, and it does mean something for us, because a lot of hard work goes into this. Brother Mal, you're a big part of that, as well as Alistair mentioned, with the preparation, the production behind the scenes, and Alistair's ability to put this all together production-wise as well. So, encouraging the listeners, this is for you. So you always feel free to reach out. We're here for you.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for me was when we stepped away from the show, and I think we have to talk to the studio audience about this because we never did at the time. I think we all felt like the timing wasn't right to do it, but so I'll just go ahead and address this. So we took a break from the show, and the reason why we took a break from the show is that I was getting called back into some solitary work with the Father, which I think all of us go through from time to time. And I highly recommend it if you don't do it or haven't done it. I highly recommend taking a break and spending some time directly with the Father. I've come to believe that the one-on-one journey, even if you're married to another Satanist, the one-on-one journey, the solitary work with Satanas still remains relevant. Now, it doesn't mean you can't have corporate period where you're doing ritual together with others. Certainly that's what a coven's all about. But I think that the solitary practice, the meditation with the Father, the prayers with the Father, it still resonates and it's still critical. So I took time away to do that, and I'm glad that I did. And I'm now trying to figure out what the next step is from here. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Cygnus, I know you took a break at one point, and I'm curious from your perspective, what you thought about the solitary journey from your vantage point and your experience.
Sure, I resonate completely, brother, with what you just shared in regard that if you haven't taken some time in solitary work, to do so. And I know Magus Alistair has written about that in his books, that if you've also worked, let's say, for a coven for the majority of your time, or maybe you've been solitary for the majority of your path, well, perhaps try something else. I think that stagnation is something on the left-hand path that works against our progress and growth, and we have to change it up every now and then. And solitary work could be one of those ingredients that a person could be called to do, certainly. I'm reminded by the metaphors of the mystics or the witches retreating into the forests or into the caves, where they're alone and the shadows are dancing on the walls and they're around the fire and the cauldron. I mean, these images do exist for a reason, because at times, the deeper you go, you are inclined to create that space where it's only you and Satanas alone.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And Alistair, I remember when you and I had the conversation about my stepping away and doing it, and you're really quick to say, I mean, I felt like I had gone to the principal's office to talk about, heading out to do this, but you were really good, and you very quickly said, you have to go do what Satanas is telling you to do, and don't look back. But I'm just curious your perspective on it and whatever experiences you've had as well.
Yeah, you have to do what you feel is right between you and Satanas. Sometimes you have to just step away. I mean, I've stepped away a couple of times in the past. I had all intentions of retiring last October, and I keep getting sucked back into this whirlwind, and I keep receiving the message, you're not finished. You're not finished. Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet. There will come a day, but not yet. So in that aspect, I think, there are probably people that are doing things that maybe they want to break away from. and they need to break away from, and they need to spend some time on themselves, spend some time with Satanas, because that's what this is all about.
Yeah,
Whether you're
right.
in a social club or whether you're in a congregation or a coven, it really doesn't matter. Sometimes you really have to step away from that, and you have to do what's right for you. Ultimately, the left-hand path journey is solitary. However, we can have friends and acquaintances along the way that we come into orbit with from time to time, and some of those last longer than others. But ultimately, this journey is about the self and the person and Satanas and their relationship.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I think that's very well said.
So, Malthorpe, when you stepped away, what did you learn from that event, and what can you share with our audience?
Yeah, so I think that's presented correctly, and that is what can I share? Because not everything is meant to be shared, and that's one of the things I learned. I have a tendency to share too much, and there's, as we had a show on this, we know that there's a reason why things are held occult, and so not everything is meant to be shared for all parties and with everyone, and so that's one of the more significant lessons that I learned. And it was funny because it was presented very directly in a scrying session, which is, Lord Satanas revealed to me those things that I need to learn about myself to be able to see myself the way you see me, and to help me correct those weak parts inside of me, and to make them the way you want them to be. And it was as blunt as this: you talk too much. You talk too much, and you tell too much of the story, and there's a time for that. The other thing is, quit asking me for things that you can do yourself. Not, we're not here to go to the piggy bank every time we want something. We're here to learn to have relationship, certainly to call in a ritual situation, certainly to call together the Father's energy to, or a demon's energy to create, and to explore those things that we're looking to do on the long term. But we don't have to ask him for everything. There are many things we can do on our own. And so that was the other one. The other one is just simply silence. Be in silence. It's okay to be in silence. It's okay to be in meditation. You don't always have to be doing something. And that's a particular challenge for me, because I've got a lot of pent up energy. I want to be able to accomplish a lot. I want to be able to do a lot. But that's not always the priority. Sometimes the priority is waiting for the Father and listening for the Father's voice. And I think that's probably enough for now. The only other thing that I think I would share is this: don't ever feel like you need to apologize for something the Father's asked you to do. If the Father has asked you to go and work in solitude, or to go and do this ritual or whatever, you don't have to be an apologist for it. Just go do it. You don't have to explain to the group that you're in, or the group that you're working with, that you're doing it. And frankly, if you have someone within a group that you're working with who doesn't understand that, then that's a problem maybe with the group, and not necessarily with you as an individual journeyman or journeywoman. So, any thoughts or comments about what I just shared?
I agree with you. I think that a lot of people are going through the motions, and they're doing a lot of things they don't want to do. And it's to them, it has become dogmatic. It has become remote. They are totally separated from their spiritual side. And I think that, the point you make, you don't owe anyone anything. You don't owe them an explanation. What you tell them is, I'm going to take time away, and that's it. And someone that is a true friend will say, I get it. That's all I need to know. You know, I just need to know you're okay. And, you know, others that start putting demands on you and, you know, expectations. And, you know, if you're getting to the point where you feel like you're obligated to do something all the time, maybe it's time that you just step away and find Satanas. Get back to your spirituality and then go forward, because you really can't do any good for yourself or for others until you get right on your path. And that's only going to happen with a connection to Satanas.
Yeah, I think that's well said. So, Cygnus, how about from you? Anything to add?
Yeah, what you really said, brother, about silence really hit home with me, and what Magnus Elser just reminded me of, and the idea of cultivating that connection with Satanas. And so, in one's practice, I just was just to kind of highlight that point. You know, should a person be doing a lot of ritual or a lot of movement, to have a moment where you're still and you connect to that silence, and as Magus Alistair mentioned earlier, connect to yourself as well. That's a part of the process. Because as you mentioned, Brother Mount, and it's when he said, you know, stop asking me for things you can do yourself. In a way, it's also asking of us to connect to ourselves as well. So I do recommend for the listeners, you know, when you're doing your moments of ritual and you're thumbing through the books and you're trying to figure things out, after you do that, you know, put the book aside, as Brother Mal mentioned, and just have a moment of silence. Just focus on your breath and just listen, quiet your thoughts, and just remain still, and cultivate that connection, as Magus Alistair mentioned. Cultivate that connection, feel it. And that's very, very so much important as well. Because I don't know about you, but I do ritual in order to cultivate the connection that I can then just carry on with me in every moment of my life. And I go back to ritual to make that fire stronger, but then I go back into my life and I carry that black flame. And the day by day process continues, and that's the satanic devotion.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Cygnus. And you know, I remember several years ago doing a course with Volek, who ran a ministry for a while, and I remember he put us through kind of a meditative, over time, a meditation work where you using a lot of imagery, but it was over several days. It wasn't like one session. It was like 3 or 4 sessions built upon each other. And I remember at the end, you're walking down this chamber, this long set of stairs, and you're walking down this chamber, and you knew that you were going to meet the Father. You were headed towards where the Father's room, where his space was, and he was on his throne. And you got to the end, and all of a sudden Volek said, okay, now open your eyes and look at the Father's face. Is he angry? And he wasn't angry for me. It was a very fatherly face, and a very, now there's strength there. So I'm not making a statement about whether or not there's safety there, because obviously Satanas is who he is. But I think we often work ourselves into believing, like we did for those of us that came from Exean backgrounds, that somehow by not doing something, there's going to be anger and bitterness and frustration. Now, I suppose that certainly could happen, but I think we attribute that to the Father's continence and to his personality. And at least that's not been confirmed in my walk. Maybe it's different for others, but I find Satanas to be a source of strength and a source of reassurance and a source of being able to get through the day because of his presence. So hopefully others feel that as well. So we'll move on from here. So Cygnus, let's go back to you again for just a minute. How has night sessions helped you in your ministry? You know, what's it done for you? Has it exposed you to different people you wouldn't have been exposed to before? How has it helped you in your day-to-day activities in your ministry?
Well, when night sessions started, right around that time, having completed the Magus degree work with Magus Alistair, it worked out in perfect time, and Lord Satanas is masterful in that way, because I almost feel that this working with you, Brother Mal and Brother Alistair, has been an intricate part of that part of my journey to really understand more deeply what the degree of the Magus means for me in the position of service and in ministry more than anything. And it's actually been very humbling for me, because in some regard, I have felt more intimately in touch with my own humanity and my own vulnerability, believe it or not. And although equally, as you said, the reassurance and the strength. And I find that to be the paradox of this path, as aware as I am to my own deification, I'm also humbled by my own humanity. So night sessions has been an intricate part of that insight and of that personal development in my own solitary work. And I have given thanks to the Father for putting both of you in my life, so that I could then go back into my ritual chamber with the connectivity that I have here today with the two of you, and to offer that to the Father, to give thanks, and then to also ask, what are you asking of me, Father? Where can I serve you, my Lord? So thank you for that, brother, and thank you for that, Magus Alistair.
Yeah, I think that's good, Sig. Alistair, how about from your vantage point? I know you've spent a lot of time doing these types of shows. Anything in particular that has lent something back to you with us working on this together?
Well, I think with any creative endeavor, it makes me better at what I'm doing. It makes me better at the craft itself. Again, no one wants to sit through a video that is unwatchable or listen to audio that is unlistenable. And so for me, being able to be creative and to use this as another avenue as far as the actual production itself is wonderful. But probably the most important part of it is, for me, it's brought other people into my circle that otherwise would probably not be here. This in itself is a ministry, and it is reaching people, and those people through our association contact me, and they are learning to find their way in the satanic kingdom. So I think, using this as yet another outlet to be able to further the kingdom, for me is probably the biggest blessing that comes out of that. That, of course, working with you two is just so much fun and such a blessing, because I do love both of you dearly.
That's really kind, man. Thanks for sharing that. So, really back to you, Alistair, I think an important question is, what is the future for night sessions from your perspective? And again, we haven't talked about this amongst the three of us. So where do you see us going? And do you see a future for it?
I do. I think that it's going to be up to Satanas. It's going to be up to him for availability and the ability for us to come together and to collaborate. I know that it's a blessing, but I guess none of us really know the future. And so the fact of the matter is, I think we continue until Satanas tells us otherwise or directs us to do something different, or causes night sessions to morph into something else as well, or maybe even spin something else off. I don't know. And that's what's wonderful about being in the satanic ministry is you just never know. It's the surprises, it's the things that you don't plan that are so wonderful. It's almost the accidents that happen, but if you just go with it and don't try to correct it, those are the most rewarding.
I like that. I think you've given us a lot to bite off and chew with that statement. I think it really gives us the ability to go in a couple of different directions. So interesting thoughts there. Cygnus, how about from your vantage point? Where do you see it? I know you've gotten very busy with your ministry and the focus that you have right now. So talk to us a little bit about where you see night sessions going.
I think Brother Alistair really just hit it on the head with how he explained it, and in terms of let's see where the Father leads us. Certainly, I am open to continue this beautiful ministry, brother, that were inspired with, and that together we have come forth to fulfill in the name of the Father. And I certainly encourage that the audience, if you want this to keep on going, email Brother Malthorpe, email myself, Brother Alistair, and so we know as well what your true will is. And I am open to the Father's will, and I'm just grateful to be, sharing in this ministry.
So Cygnus, let's go to you next with this tough question. If you had the ability to change anything on the format or the way we do the show, the way we produce the show, what would that be? What would it look like?
Well, I'm a bit of a satanic monk, so I'm always a little biased in terms of infernal prayers. But if it was up to me, I would do hours of infernal prayers, and I know that we probably don't have all the time in the world for that. But I wouldn't change a thing, brothers. I think that creativity and seeing where that serpent slithers and how it comes up is the best part of the process. Those surprises.
Alistair, what about you? We give you a magic wand. You can change anything about the format you want to. What would you do differently?
Well, first, I'd like to say, Cygnus, you come up with some wonderful prayers on social media. I mean, those are inspiring to me every time you post, and I think people really love those. I would like to just see what Satanas has in store, because I think he creates relationships and he creates these plans for a reason. And we don't know what that reason is. But again, if we don't fight it and we don't try to make it something that it's not, in other words, we don't try to turn it into what we think it should be, but we allow him to turn it into what it must be or should be, I think we benefit so much from that. That would be the only thing that I would wish, is that he would just take it and do whatever he thought was best with it, and whatever is going to reach the satanic community the best way. Ultimately, this is a vehicle of ministry. And while we don't try to actively recruit people, what we do is we do tell people there is something different. And if they are looking for something, they can look here. May not be the thing they're looking for. But I think that would probably be my biggest wish, is to leave it to Satanas.
Yeah, I think in a way, I think you said it two ways, and I think both are correct. I mean, leave it to Satanas, and it's one of the reasons why the show sometimes is 45 minutes, the show sometimes is 30 minutes, the show sometimes is nearly 2 hours, is that, we don't try to manufacture what happens on these shows. I know on multiple occasions there have been times when we've come out of a show and gone, wow, where did that come from? That was just so good. You couldn't even have written that for the script. And I think that value added does come from the Father. That's not us. That's the Father using the show and using, his instruments to be able to deliver the message directly to those that need to hear it. I think the other thing, though, too, is, I think the those that have written in and have shared certain things that they either wanted to know more about or hear more about has been really good for us to be able to target what the needs are. And we'd love to have more feedback along those lines as we decide what we're going to do and whether or not there's the need for the show to begin with. So stay tuned. We'll keep asking ourselves that question, and would love any feedback that you all want to, as the listening audience, want to share with us. So, Alistair, you put a lot of effort. You were very kind and gracious to, to give me some credit and to give Cygnus some credit as well. But your skills, your ability to edit and to turn something into a really quality product, I think has been a huge asset for us. And I just want to acknowledge that extra work that you've performed. I love the startup of the show and the end of the show, which is something that you created as almost like a visual could have for kind of organizing the bookends of our show. And so thanks for your creative element that you bring to it too.
Thank you, brother. I certainly do appreciate that. I love doing that. I love doing things that are creative and things that have not been done before. And some might say they're a little quirky, but they're guided by Satanas. I ask for him to lead me through when I first start editing a project. And I don't stop until I feel like that he is satisfied with the work. And in fact, many times he lets me know through either physical exhaustion or things happen during the edit that just are perfect. And it's not something I've done. It's just the way it happens. And again, it goes back to some of the mistakes are the most beautiful and wonderful things. The way a person answers a question, the way they say something, the point that they make, it takes on a life of its own, quite honestly, and I love that.
Yeah, I do too. And Cygnus, you certainly have contributed a great deal of those aha moments, something salient that kind of sets Alistair and I off, realizing the truth and the wisdom that's coming from the Father when you say what you do. I'm curious whether or not you have a favorite show or something that happened in a favorite episode. Anything you want to share with the audience?
Thank you, Brother Mal, and also Brother Alistair. Thank you so much, as well as Brother Mal mentioned, your gifts, your satanic ministry that you have so gracefully or unholy gracefully shared with us. And because certainly in my prayers for the coven and for our listeners, for all of us here, the feeling I always get is that the Father is with each and every one of us, and that he has blessed this work. And he's moving and alive in each and every one of us, because we are legion. We are legion. We are many, we are unique, but we are also one. And that's one point I also want to convey to the listeners, that although each of us have our own personal relationship with Satanas, we are also the many heads of the dragon, and that collective body is the mind of Satan. That is Satan alive very well in each and every one of us. And we might look at each other at times, or you might have a brother or a sister or someone in a coven, you might wonder, what they are talking about. Is it real or not real? However, I encourage to put our egos aside and to embrace that spirit of unity in the spirit of Satanas that moves through our heart and it moves through our own genius. So, but for that to be done, we must cultivate that silence and that stillness. And both of you brothers have been part of that path for me as mirroring the Father back to me. So thank you so much for that. I think, did that answer your question, Brother Mao?
Yeah. Any favorite episode or any favorite?
The episodes, I look at the episodes like serpents. So it started off with one piece, and then the first episode, and as it continues slithering, I continue to see more of the serpent's body. And then the third episode came around, and then we were in the middle of the body. And I think now we're by the sixth episode. And in each episode, I obviously see how it's evolved from the first one to where we are today, reflecting on this beautiful ministry and whether it should continue or to what effect we can further the kingdom and through this great work. My episode that I liked also is when we spoke to the specifics of the altar elements and the different ways we can arrange the altar, and how that altar is also reflective of our own unique internal makeup and of the self, and how we relate with the infernal divine.
Yeah, I like that. Alistair, how about from your perspective, any favorite episode or favorite segment?
I don't really have a favorite. I love all of them. I think what is my favorite thing from all of these episodes is how much fun we have recording these. When I go back and I start editing and I start listening, because I'm not really listening in the moment as we're doing it, but afterward I go back and I start editing and I go, that is hilarious. Some of the things that we've said, that didn't make it into the mix, and, some of the blooper type things, but then some of the things that really touch the spirit as well. After listening to it again, it just really, it's like, wow, that was really profound. That really gives me chill bumps. It's just like I feel invigorated after listening to it again and having the opportunity to really listen for substance and not just hear. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I love that. And so I'm the same way as some of our listeners driving down the road, listening to the tapings back to back, and I'm learning things from you all that you said on the show, and I was there present for it. But like you said, it's some of the stuff is profound, and you have to listen to it a couple of times to be able to really get the nut out of the information that's being shared. And again, I'm going to say it again, that is from the Father. That's not something that we're patting ourselves on the back. These are things that He has given, and so the focus and the praise and the honor should go to the Father, not to anything that we've done. We've just been instruments. So if you're just joining us, this is Night Sessions coming to you from Studio 3B, talking about Night Sessions Revisited. We're breaking for this brief commercial. We will be right back. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss it.
Hail Satan. This is Satan Satratus. I would like to welcome you to our open study, Magnus Opus Satanic Coven meetup. Happens every Tuesday. Sometimes we have more of an educational conversation. Other times we just hang out and share a little bit about each and every one of our own paths. And every time we open our minds, our hearts, in the spirit of tolerance, unity, mutual respect, and we give thanks to the Infernal Father in our own words. This is where we come together to study the teachings of the ancients, to talk about the teachings of the elders, to honor the traditions of old, but to also honor our own path that each and every one of us are carving out for ourselves in our own infernal descension into the great work. And that great work is your work, your personal work, cultivating that personal relationship with Satanas in a very simple way, in a very real way. And it can be as personalized and as customized how you want to make it for you. And we hope that this is encouraging, empowering, and supportive. In no way do we ever condone any negativity. This is only about your self-empowerment, your liberation, and true satanic enlightenment and unity with the infernal Father, where true ecstasy can be experienced real time in your life. I send you infernal blessings. Hail to you, and hail Satan.
If you're just joining us, I'm your co-host, Mouthwork Draco in Studio 3B, and this is Night Sessions. With me is Magus Alistair Knott and Magus Cygnus Atratus. This evening, we're hosting a special episode entitled Night Sessions Revisited. Alistair, share with us what you're working on currently.
Well, I've been doing some videos and some video interviews. I love doing those. I love exposing people that normally would not have an opportunity to get in front of the left-hand path. And one of my interesting guests that I'm going to have is this coming Sunday, I'm going to interview and record S. Conley. I don't know if a lot of people know who she is, but that's going to be a fantastic interview, and it will probably air the following week. But she has been so gracious to schedule this with me, and she has written so many great books, and I look forward to that. So for me, that's what I've been doing, and I just really, really enjoy that. I get such a blessing from that.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I bought one of her books really early on in the process. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That should be a good episode. Anything else you're doing?
You know, I had thought about writing another book, but I'm not inspired. I don't have the words from Satanas. I started writing a couple chapters probably 3 or 4 months ago, and it didn't go anywhere. Now, Cygnus and I, we're doing some writing together, kind of putting together some different subjects. Cygnus really writes some wonderful material. So I'm kind of in the background to help him develop that and to kind of help him along, because I think if people are really exposed to that, they're really going to love it. Cygnus is working on a PhD, and he has really written some fantastic things that are really deep into the actual spirit, and I just love that. So that's what I've been up to.
Yeah, he is an incredible writer, and sometimes when he and I'll get on a phone call, I hear him typing in the background, and I'm thinking, okay, he's working on his PhD, and he's typing up the entire conversation that we're having right now. So, and of course, I'm joking, but Cygnus, you do some incredible work. I'm curious where you are and what you're doing, maybe some projects that you haven't talked about.
Well, thank you so much, brothers, for your kind words. And as you mentioned, Brother Mal, we're just instruments in the hands of something greater. And that's certainly how I feel. I certainly just feel that I'm just a pencil in the hands of Satanas. And I give thanks every day for having crossed paths with Magus Alistair and you, Father Mal, for this opportunity, because this has only given me the opportunity as well to cultivate the space to nurture the infernal spirit in a way where I could continue evolving. Because stagnation, as we mentioned earlier, is that one thing on our path that works against us, and it's something in my own journey as well that I have to remain aware of. So one of the things that I do in my satanic devotion is to continually cultivate that flame of inspiration through reflection or journaling or just sitting in front of my computer. And whether I'm doing a research project that's running through some books, or simply just writing prayers from my heart. It could be very simple. It could be simple as, Father, I love you. However, it means a lot. So for the listeners, I don't want you to think at all that you're writing or anything has to be anything fancy or anything like that. It just has to be meaningful and powerful from your own heart. But as an artist, yeah, I do kill time and sit back and I love to write satanic prayers. I love to, on a nice evening, put the fireplace on, if I had one, and just sip on a little tea or something, and enjoy the stars, and just right away and speak from the heart to my Father, because in those moments he's also very much alive. So right now I am working on a compendium or collection of satanic prayers, and I do find a lot of inspiration from the ancient manuscripts of these days, from Sumeria, Akkadian, Babylonian, and also Egyptian, Hebrew, Aramaic, Latin. I am a fancy of ancient languages, and I do firmly enjoy speaking in Latin when I do satanic prayers. I believe there's power there, as well as with the Enochian language. So I do encourage also the listeners, pick one of the languages that you kind of like, that maybe work or flow easier for you, and learn some power words. It doesn't have to be complete sentence, but it can be "Invoco Satanas," which is simply "I call to you," or "Hear me, exaudite." It doesn't have to be, but it's powerful, because when you begin to speak in these magical tongues in your ritual chamber, it also evokes your own psyche to come out of the profane, out of the ordinary world, and compels you into that spiritual world. And this is the power of language, and this is what it means to do spellcraft. Spell it out. So that's what I do.
Yeah, thanks for that, Cygnus. So let's move on to our final question. And we do this each time. We're going to do it again. So, Alistair, I think we'll start with you for the final question. What's the most important message from Satanas that you want to send our listeners about their walk with Satan?
I would say, don't put too much pressure on yourself. You don't have to live up to any expectation. And I think that's important for everyone to realize, that Satanism, theistic Satanism, is about the self and about being able to take what Satanas gives and mold that into the individual walk on the left-hand path. But don't get discouraged, and don't feel like that you always have to do something. As you have said, sometimes just resting and just being quiet certainly allows you to hear those subtle voices in the wilderness, and they won't lead you astray.
Yeah. So, from my vantage point, to continue, I'll continue that thought in just a second. Cygnus, how about from your perspective, an important message you want to leave our listeners from the Father?
I also want to second what Brother Alistair mentioned regarding the power of also that silence, that stillness, and that we don't have to always overexert ourselves, that we can move naturally where it feels most comfortable, and to hear that subtle guidance to quiet our mind. The more relaxed you are, the more your nervous system is relaxed, the better in touch you can be with your intuition and with that inner genius, that your guardian demon speaking to you, nudging on your heart, or pulling on your mind in some way, or simply maybe even caressing you, and the hairs are just standing on your neck or standing on your back. But I also like to share a message of empowerment to stand and to affirm your Luciferian will, your satanic strength. Speak to the cosmos, to the universes, to the multiverses, into the abyss. Where's your infernal lord? To the lords and hosts of hell, to the ancient ones, to the nameless ones, and to the hidden ones. Speak your will to the ether, and to all of legion, and to the hordes, and to the shining ones, to the serpent ones. Because if you are called on this path, Satan accepts you as you are. So accept yourself as you are. Just do the great work.
Yeah. Well, both of you hit upon something that I think I want to talk about for just a second, and that is, so several individuals have reached out in the last couple of weeks, and they've been talking about the fact that they're not, in one case, they're not hearing the Father's voice at all any longer, and in another case, there's an impending silence there, but it's not like the voice is not as strong as it was before. And so the question is, where do you go? What do you do with it? And I think you all both hit upon this, and that is, our journeys are definitely different. Something that works for someone else may not work for you. Cygnus brought out the fact that we're legion, but in putting all those pieces and parts together, it's putting all those pieces and parts together in unity that provides the unity. It doesn't mean that we all are cut from the same cloth, walk the same journey, have the same experiences, have the same lessons from the Father. They can be different. But I remember back in the day, for anybody that had a television with an antenna on top of it, your dad's watching the TV show, and all of a sudden the signal gets weak. What do? You have to get up and go take the rabbit ears or take the antenna and move it around a little bit until the show comes back. And then in some cases, most of us had to stand there while the antenna was able to pick up the show, because if you moved even a meter, if you moved just even slightly, that television show was going to go away. And sometimes that's the same with the Father. Sometimes you have to keep going back, and you have to keep listening, and you have to keep talking. It's about building a relationship. It's not a terminal situation just because you feel like Satanas has left for a couple of days or even a couple of weeks. So, guys, anything you want to add to that last part there? Because I know both of you have talked about this before.
I think you really hit the nail on the head, Malthor. I think it's about the individual's spirituality and their journey, and sometimes being too busy will cause a person to lose that communication, and they won't hear from Satanas. He will not disturb us. He will not wake us up in the middle of the night. He talks. We should listen. And if we're not listening, he'll stop talking until you get to the point where you will listen to what he's saying. He's not going to waste time saying things over and over and over again. So when a person says, well, I'll do anything for Satan, and blah, 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 he listens to that. And more importantly, he watches to see what that person does. Are they true? Do they really mean it? Is their heart in the right place? Or is it just bullshit? And he can tell very quickly.
Sig?
100%, 100% with what Brother Alistair just mentioned, with what you mentioned before, Brother Mal. And I think that just hits home.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, that's a wrap for show number 7. Thank you both for being here and for what you do in the service to him. To our studio audience, this has been Night Sessions. On behalf of my co-host, pleasant dreams and hail Satan.
In nomine Domine Padre Venali, nomine Domine Madre Venali, nomine Domine Spiritu Antichristu. Enshrouded within the devil's embrace, seen and unseen within the devil's eye, standing upon the devil's cross, in between the netherworlds, here we stand, averted to the lies of this shattered paradigm, affirmed with the devil's kiss of his serpent power, having descended down the tree of life and death, reverted creation into a destruction unbecoming, the unholy grace of our infernal Lord, embedded within the devil's eye. The devil's trinity is becoming. Hail, Satan!